Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. A wave of surprise Israeli strikes across Gaza kills more than 400 and wounds over 500. Family members of hostages fear for their safety. Plus, Canada's new PM gets testy with reporters when asked about disclosing financial interests. Political commentator Brian Lilly explains. And Hudson's Bay shelves across the country being picked clean as Canada's oldest retailer seeks liquidation.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. A wave of surprise Israeli strikes across the Gaza Strip have killed more than 400 people and wounded over 500, according to the Gaza's health ministry. Israel claims Hamas refused Israeli demands to change the ceasefire agreement. Elaine Carroll of the Associated Press reports.
Israel said it was hitting Hamas targets in its heaviest assault on the territory since a ceasefire took effect in January. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he ordered the strikes because of a lack of progress in talks to extend the ceasefire. Officials said the operation was open-ended and is expected to expand. The White House said it had been consulted and voiced support for Israel's actions. Meanwhile, Hamas warned that Israel's new airstrikes breached their ceasefire and put the fate of hostages into jeopardy.
Saudi Arabia and Qatar are condemning the attacks, while Turkey is accusing Israel of genocide. And as Israel launched that barrage of surprise strikes early Tuesday, the mothers of hostages held in Gaza feared for their children's safety. One mother saying that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims the hostages are his second priority.
We have no idea what is the condition of the living hostages. And of course, the one that were already killed. We're very scared that the strikes will prevent us from finding them later on. So I'm very, very scared. I'm very frustrated of what is going on and have no idea what is going to be next.
UN human rights spokesperson Thamin El-Khitan on Tuesday said he was horrified by Israel's airstrike across the Gaza Strip.
This will add tragedy onto the tragedy. The last 18 months of violence have made abundantly clear that there is no military path out of this crisis. The only way forward is a political settlement in line with international law.
And in other news, former Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy is calling on Poland and the Baltic states to abide by a treaty banning landmines. Those countries want to pull out of the international treaty banning landmines because of Russian threats to frontline NATO states. Axworthy was the driving force behind the treaty and says pulling back from the convention will make the entire world less safe. He says Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly should lead an effort to convince allies to stick with the treaty. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced a plan to boost Canada's military footprint in the Arctic. Carney says Ottawa will expand the Canadian Armed Forces presence there while turning to Australia's over-the-horizon radar tech to monitor threats from adversaries like China and Russia.
This is an investment of more than $6 billion in the most advanced and efficient radar system. The over-the-horizon radar system will enable Canada to detect and respond to both air and maritime threats over our Arctic faster and from further away. We must invest in Canada's north to defend our sovereignty. Arctic sovereignty is a strategic priority of our government. Recently, Minister Blair announced over $2.67 billion in investment in military facilities, including one here in Iqaluit.
Carney says he's also pledging $253 million to upgrade power plants in Nunavut, along with $20 million for a hydroelectricity project to help move northern residents off of diesel. While Mark Carney was in London Monday, reporters asked him about the disclosure of financial interests and possible conflicts of interest, and Carney seemed to go on the defensive. Conservative MP Michael Barrett spoke to reporters about this today.
Remember what he told all of you and all Canadians after the Liberals' English language leaders debate in Montreal. He said, quote, "I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management," end quote. Now, I'm sure each and every one of you saw his exchange with reporters in London yesterday. Now, did that sound to you like someone who didn't have any connections to Brookfield? And recall what his office said last week, quote, "Despite repeated attempts, Carney's transition team have declined to clarify if the new Prime Minister still possesses any financial interests in Brookfield," end quote. So apparently, Mark Carney doesn't think that Canadians deserve to know before they vote, and apparently he thinks answering questions on this subject is beneath him. When he was asked about moving his Brookfield headquarters to America from Canada, he lied. When he's asked about his assets, he says he doesn't have any conflicts, and he attacks the motives of the ones who are asking the questions.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says the next steps on continuing with the search of the Prairie Green landfill near Winnipeg will be discussed with the families of the murdered women whose remains have been found there. On Monday, RCMP said a second set of remains that were found at the landfill have been identified as Mercedes Marin. A first set was found last month and were identified to be Morgan Harris. Both women died at the hands of a serial killer in 2022. Kinew told reporters Monday that more remains were discovered that are believed to belong to Marin and Harris.
Mercedes Marin and Morgan Harris are coming home. This is what we set out to do. I don't know if many of us knew the odds of success. I certainly was always trying to keep a realistic perspective, but it turns out bringing them home was within our grasp and something we were able to do for these families. And as we reflect on this whole experience, from the first times we spoke about it publicly through all the ups and downs to now having the news that Mercedes and Morgan are going to be coming home to their families, I hope that Manitobans and Canadians believe that this reflects positively on our province and on our country. We went through a whole heck of a lot to get to this point, but at the end of the day, we did the right thing. We did right by these families, and we are bringing their loved ones home.
In July 2024, Jeremy Skibicki was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder and given 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole for 25 years. A decision on the future of Hudson's Bay may be coming in the next few days. Canada's oldest company, founded in 1670, has suffered through declining consumer spending and owes money to almost 2,000 creditors. A court will decide on the company's decision to liquidate all 80 of its stores. BCN's Landon Hickok has that story.
Shoppers in Lethbridge say it's sad to see what's happened to the nation's oldest company. Hudson's Bay awaits a court approval on full liquidation, which could begin a few days from now and last for up to 12 weeks. Shoppers nationwide have been flocking to department stores to grab record low deals that they may never see again.
Yeah, I went there to pick up some shoes and slippers and some pants, so I was still coming back to get more. Yeah, and then we got the 50% off and I'm happy about it.
Lots of people. Everybody had something in their arms and hands buying, and it looked like everybody was having a good time.
Hudson's Bay customers will also have until April 6 to use up any remaining gift cards, but will no longer be able to earn, view, or redeem points from any Hudson's Bay MasterCard. Declining customers are in part to blame for the company's struggles, alongside increased competition, higher maintenance costs, and high creditor debt. Hudson's Bay began seeking creditor protection 2 weeks ago after owing almost $1 billion in creditor debt.
When my wife was alive, we used to shop here. She used to shop here lots, but anymore in the last 10 years, no, so not so much.
Regardless, there is still hope from Canadians that the iconic department store can at least survive this process if the company can find the money to save at least a portion of their stores.
I would like to see it stay there forever, but it's not going to, so it's going to feel like it should be there, and it's not going to be.
Yeah, I guess I hope they're staying still in the store because I still have to go there.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
A strike by thousands of education support staff across Alberta appears to be coming to a close as 2 more school divisions reach deals with the union. The Canadian Union of Public Employees says tentative contracts with the Parkland School Division and the Calgary Board of Education are to be voted on today. This after union members in Edmonton and Fort McMurray reached deals with their employers over the weekend after job action that lasted months over a wage dispute. Union President Rory Gill says he's happy that more school districts are following the pattern set in Fort McMurray and Edmonton. Alberta Health Services has been notified of a confirmed case of measles in a visitor to the Taber area. This case has been in public settings while infectious. Individuals who were in the following locations during the specified dates may have been exposed to measles. This includes Taber Health Center Emergency Department on March 11th, 12th, and 13th, and also Taber's Shoppers Drug Mart on March the 11th. This case is in addition to the 3 potential exposures issued for the Edmonton area earlier today. Well, motorists on southbound Highway 4 at Highway 845 were detoured to a stretch of gravel roads following a serious motor vehicle collision involving a car and a semi-truck. The truck in the video that's parked southbound on Highway 4 suffered significant damage on its front bumper on the passenger side, while an SUV facing eastbound amid a field of debris laid in a ditch with serious damage. Coaldale RCMP were on the scene at the time of this newscast and will provide an update once the scene has been cleared. Lethbridge Police Service is initiating a targeted enforcement strategy to address pedestrian safety. On Tuesday morning, LPS went throughout the drop-off zones of Winston Churchill High School to remind and educate motorists and pedestrians to follow the signs and correct infrastructure through school and playground zones. Danny Lompness of LPS's Traffic Response Unit says that inattentiveness is probably the largest contributor to pedestrian accidents.
Big things we always see is, vehicles blocking driveways or parking on crosswalks, which ultimately, restricts vision of motorists for pedestrians using the crosswalks. We see lots of people, and not just kids, it's all over the city, but not using that crosswalk, and it's like crossing in between intersections, right? Well, as we all know, that there's lots of vehicles parked on the streets all throughout the city, and when pedestrians are coming out onto the street in between vehicles, sometimes it's really hard for them to be seen, which obviously poses a risk to themselves.
We greatly appreciate the campaign because many of our students walk to school. We are a community school, so lots of students travel by foot and by bicycle to get here. I think challenges related to our school specifically, we have one large, long road in front of us, and it's fairly easy to pick up speed on that road. And so I would say that's a major challenge for us, is just the speed of traffic, the speed of cars driving on the road in front of us. But then on top of that, because we have students coming from all over, they're crossing at all areas on that street. So I think it's helpful for students to know where actually they cross for safety.
This initiative from LPS will run through the month of March, and LPS asks residents to do their part to know the rules and eliminate distractions. Community support initiatives are common in Lethbridge, such as the fundraising campaign to support the Lethbridge Elder Abuse Response Network, or LEARN. The initiative to raise awareness and funds is led by the Therapeutic Recreation Gerontology students from Lethbridge Polytechnic. Marianne Mean, a Polytechnic student, explains the importance of supporting our seniors.
We've decided to raise money for the LEARN program here in Lethbridge to help support seniors' abuse responses and to help prevent that. We chose Learn because they mirror a lot of our values as therapeutic recreation. I believe our total was $934.25. We've learned a lot of hands-on information about how to best address the needs of our seniors in their emotional, physical, cognitive, spiritual needs, and how we can address that with them with non-pharmacological interventions.
Elder abuse is extremely common. Elder abuse, unlike child abuse, is not legislated and it's not in the criminal code. So what that means is that unless someone has experienced a physical assault, a sexual assault, or a traditional theft, there's really no recourse within the criminal justice system. So that means that programs like ours are really impactful to come in and help folks to maybe find non-traditional ways of providing support to that abuse. The most common type of abuse that we see is financial abuse. We've also supported folks through emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. Neglect is a very big one as well. When we're looking at older adults and we're looking at the things that they need to be successful in their lives, they're often depending on loved ones or children to assist them. I believe the Learn program supported over 100 people just last year.
The students' fundraising initiatives included creating and selling T-shirts and crocheting and selling dishcloths, among other items. Even though we're in the age of a fast-paced digital world, research continues to highlight the importance and benefits of slowing down and reading a good book now and then. The University of Lethbridge education professor Dr. Robin Bright explains the benefits of reading and how this habit has changed among Canadians.
Reading has taken a shift for sure in the last couple of decades, starting in around 2000 when digital media started to become really important. Reading has been decreasing. The most recent study in 2023 from BookNet shows that readers across Canada are decreasing in the amount of time, but it's still pretty robust in terms of how much time Canadians read. Something that we should point out is that Alberta students have been doing extremely well on international tests of literacy. However, overall, a lot of young people really drop off as readers after the elementary grades. Reading has a lot of other benefits as well, maintaining brain health, developing empathy, relaxation.
According to BookNet Canada, of the top 10 leisure and recreational activities performed by Canadians, watching videos and television is the first activity at 89%, while reading or listening to audiobooks is the 9th activity at 49%. Two astronauts who were stuck on board the International Space Station for 9 months are on their way back to Earth. NASA's Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore launched last June as the first test pilots for Boeing's new Starliner capsule before quickly encountering trouble. A replacement crew has since arrived at the ISS, opening the hatch for their return home. Wilmore and Williams were due back on Earth today, with their SpaceX capsule expected to make a splash off the coast of Florida later on this evening. Well, it would have been very cool to be in Florida this evening to watch that splashdown, not to mention just being in that warm, balmy air. Here in southern Alberta, most of the snow is gone, but we saw only a high of 0 and mainly dreary conditions out there. We'll be right back with the weather forecast. Welcome back. Well, the temperature is about to climb once again here in the Lethbridge region. Here's a look at our 7-day and national forecast.
Today's forecast shows a high of 2 with some chances of flurries and a low of -5. Tomorrow has a high of 8 with sunny skies and a low of -1. Thursday's looking to be quite the same with a high of 9 and partly cloudy skies and a low of -1. Friday is having a high of 12 with nice sunny skies and a low of 2. Saturday is having a 30% chance of showers with a high of 6 and a low of -3. Sunday is looking to be a high of 13 with partly cloudy skies and a low of 7. Wrapping up the 7-day forecast with Monday, we're having a projected high of 15 with partly cloudy skies and a projected low of 9. Looking at today's almanac, the average high for this time of year is 7 degrees, and the low is -6. The record high for this time of year was set back only 1 year ago in 2024 with a high of 20, and the low was set back in 1965 with a low of -26. The sun rose at 7:39 a.m. today and set at 7:41. Moving on to the national forecast, both Vancouver and Victoria have a 30% chance of showers, with Victoria having a high of 10 and Vancouver having a high of 8. Both Edmonton and Calgary are going to be nice and sunny, with Edmonton having a high of 6 and Calgary having a high of 9. Saskatoon, Regina, and Winnipeg are all looking to be nice and sunny, with Saskatoon and Winnipeg sharing a high of 1, and Regina's the odd one out with a high of -2. On to central Canada, Toronto and Ottawa both share a nice sunny sky with high temperatures, Toronto having a high of 15 and Ottawa with a high of 12. Montreal is having some partly cloudy skies with a high of 15. On to the east coast, Fredericton, Halifax, and Charlottetown share a nice sunny sky, with Fredericton having a high of 9, 10 for Halifax, and Charlottetown being the odd one out with a high of 1. And to finish off this national forecast, St. John's is looking to have a 30% chance of freezing rain with a high of 3.
Economists expect Canada's trade war with the U.S. to drive prices higher in the coming months. This as Stats Canada says the country's inflation rate rose sharply in February to 2.6% from 1.9% in January. However, Ottawa's move to lower the consumer carbon price to 0% as of April 1st may take some steam out of inflation figures next month. BMO's Benjamin Raitses says March's inflation data will likely also show an uptick as the GST tax holiday will be completely gone from the equation. Canadian farmland values have been seeing a slower growth as farmers report lower revenues. Farm Credit Canada says the average value of agricultural land grew 9.3% last year. The Crown Corporation's chief economist says there's been a reset in commodity prices after earlier spikes driven by the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. JP Gervais says uncertainty is making it harder for farmers to invest when their industry is so capital intensive and low margin. With that in mind, here is a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 79 points on the day to finish at 24,706. The Dow was down 260 points to 41,581. The S&P 500 was down 60 to 5614, and the Nasdaq was down 304 points to finish at 17,504. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 93 cents to 66.64 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to 4.06 U.S. Gold was up 34.42 to 30.3404 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 25 cents to 34.01 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.60 per bushel. Barley is at $6.64. Canola is at $13.01, and corn is at $7.95 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was up 35 cents to 205.37. Feeder cattle were up 35 cents to 284.97. Lean hogs April contract was down 47 cents to 87.60. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 69.90 US.
Recapping one of our top stories today, a wave of surprise Israeli strikes across the Gaza Strip have killed more than 400 people and wounded over 500, according to the Gaza's health ministry. Israel claims Hamas refused Israeli demands to change the ceasefire agreement. Meantime, family members of hostages are left fearing for their loved ones' safety. Coming up, Toronto Sun political columnist Brian Lilly sheds light on Mark Carney's actions in pausing the consumer carbon tax and what current polls are showing for a potential election. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube page anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. Canada has a new prime minister and an election could be right around the corner. But in the meantime, there are tariffs, trips to Europe, and carbon tax pauses. Here to talk about it all is federal political commentator and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly. Brian, welcome back.
Good to be with you.
Wonderful to have you as well. Okay, so as we all know by now, Canada has a new prime minister, Sir Mark Carney. He was sworn in last Friday and immediately signed an order in council to stop the consumer carbon tax. But he didn't actually stop it, did he? I think he only paused it. Brian, you were critical about the way he tried to make people think he signed away the carbon tax. And in fact, you said that Carney straight up lied. And what did you call him? Mark Blarney on the front
Blarney, yeah.
On the front page of the Toronto
That was
Sun.
our front page. So
Okay.
There's a couple of things. One, the carbon tax is still there. You're right. What they did was they reduced the rate to zero on the consumer portion. The industrial carbon tax is still there. But the law gives cabinet, or governor and council as it's officially called, the authority to lower the rate or raise the rate or decide that it doesn't apply to certain things, does apply to others. So they lowered the consumer carbon tax to zero. But the way that he did it, it was the first cabinet meeting and they invited the TV cameras in. I don't recall, and remember, I did spend more than a decade up on the Hill, about 15 years on the Hill. And I never remember reporters being invited into cabinet. We'd get invited into the caucus room sometimes, hear the opening statement, and then be asked to leave. Carney invites the cameras in, the journalists in, no questions, but then he does this thing, just like Donald Trump speaks from the desk for a couple of minutes and then pulls out this thing and says, and I've signed it, and closes it. Well, Canadian Press photographer got a photo of what he signed, and it wasn't an order in council, which he could have done. He signed this made-up little document that said, I hereby instruct that the consumer fuel charge be eliminated by April 1st. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was, I hereby instruct, and then his signature. No prime minister has the authority to do that. He could have just had the order in council, which 4 ministers under the federal system, I believe it's 4, are required to sign. He could have signed that in front of everybody. Instead, he came up with this charade, signing a document that has about as much legal authority as a certificate of achievement, employee of the month type thing you pick up to give to you at Staples. I have no idea why he went to that length. And then, of course, as you say, carbon tax is still there. The full carbon tax is still there. They've just lowered part of it to zero. The rest of it's still going on.
Yeah, because I mean, he needs backing to do that, doesn't he? Of the Parliament, yeah.
For it to fully be eliminated, that requires a vote in Parliament.
Yes.
They've got the regulatory authority to do what they did, but they need the full backing of Parliament to eliminate it.
Yeah. So meanwhile, we have Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, on the other hand, saying that he would kill off the whole carbon tax if elected prime minister. And many Canadians watching the news might be surprised to find out that, like you were saying, that the carbon tax is still in place and it's actually going up on April the 1st. So maybe explain the difference between the two.
Yeah, so they've left it on for industrial emitters. It's the output-based pricing system, and it rises every April 1st, just like the consumer carbon tax would. How that all plays out, steel mills. Mark Carney keeps using the example of steel mills. We're seeing layoffs at Algoma and a couple of other steel plants here in Ontario. I'm sure you're going to see that. And that's due to the tariffs. That's going to roll out in different industries affected by the steel and aluminum tariffs. And then April 2nd, the other tariffs. But April 1st, the industrial carbon tax goes up. So I've been trying to find out exactly where does that apply? Because on your home heating oil or home heating, if you use natural gas, you're not going to pay it. But what about the farmer trying to dry his grain? Are they still paying the industrial tax? Because that's an industrial use. So much isn't known here, but the fact is major industries are going to be paying, and they're going to be paying more, and Mark Carney wants to increase it. Now, after Pierre Poilievre said, I'll scrap the whole thing and we'll use technology to lower greenhouse gas emissions, a carrot, not a stick, Carney was asked about this in London and defended the greenhouse or the industrial carbon tax and said, in fact, we need it if we want to be able to sell our oil and gas or other products into Europe. That's not true. I looked up the top countries for imports or exports to the EU for things like liquefied natural gas or oil. And Norway and the United Kingdom have a carbon tax, but the United States doesn't. Russia definitely doesn't. Azerbaijan doesn't. Kazakhstan doesn't. Algeria doesn't. So, Carney, again, going around saying things that just aren't true. I mean, he really is earning his nickname, Mark Blarney.
And you did mention there that in Europe, Carney was in Europe. So we're talking almost immediately after being sworn in, he jets off to Europe. And Brian, before we talk about the purpose of that meeting, I understand that his news conference with reporters didn't go well. So what happened that saw Mark Carney get testy with reporters?
So he has a habit of not liking any question that isn't deferential. Bank governors, it's not the same as an adversarial relationship between political journalists and an elected official. They often, the finance journalists are, oh, just tell me what you're doing. Oh, tell me what this is. They write it down. They go off and they do their story. It's very different. They're not challenging them all the time. Politicians get challenged by political journalists. One thing Mark Carney has been dogged about is his assets, his investments, his property ownership, all of that. It's pretty substantial. We found out that he had $6.8 million worth of share options from Brookfield Asset Management when he left at the end of January. We found that out not from him, but because the company's required under regulatory filings to reveal things like this for top executives. Carney won't tell anybody anything. And all he will say now is, it's in a blind trust. You have to trust me. Well, Stephanie Levitz from the Globe and Mail, one of the fairest, straightforward reporters you will ever meet up on Parliament Hill, respected by all, asks Carney a question about his assets and said, Canadians should know something. You can't just say it's in a blind trust. And he started lecturing her. And she tried to follow up, and he kept lecturing. And then it was Rosemary Barton from CBC. I mean, if you're going to find a friendlier reporter to the Trudeau-Carney Liberals, it's going to be tough. And she said, you were in the private sector for a long time. It's hard not to believe that there wouldn't be some kind of conflict of interest. And he said to her, look inside yourself, Rosemary, and then started accusing her of having ill will and started to lecture her. This was shocking to watch. 3 questions in a row with 2 female senior journalists on the Hill who followed him to Europe being lectured for daring to ask questions. Now, what's the issue here? The issue is Carney has a massive investment portfolio. He managed funds for Brookfield Asset Management, a company that does a lot of business with the government. Should he have to recuse himself from certain decisions that the government makes if it's going to benefit Brookfield? Absolutely. But the public should know that as well. And all he is saying is, you have no right to know. I've put it in a blind trust. No one needs to know anything. Some of his pay, the way it would be doled out, he's going to keep getting payments from these funds that he helped set up, investment funds, for years to come. And he can't sell that off. He can't divest of that. So we should get to know who's paying him and why, while he's prime minister. And his view is, you don't get to know, and how dare you ask me questions?
Wow, what a contentious situation there. Now, the official news release said that the trip was all about strengthening Canada's trade relationships with European allies and defending Canada's sovereignty. So did Carney accomplish that goal?
He got a lot of good photo ops that he's going to use in the coming election campaign, and that's about it. The Canadian side asked for a joint news conference with both French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. They didn't get either one. They got a few opening words from Macron and Carney standing at podiums together, but neither side took questions. There were, a couple of moments of Carney and Starmer sitting down together that was caught on camera, but no joint news conference. And of course, you just got him walking in and saying hello to King Charles. Yeah. Those are all great photo ops. It was the most expensive pre-election photo op we've ever paid for the Liberal Party. Taxpayers paid for that, and it's just going to be used to make Mark Carney look prime ministerial, to run in ads, to put in brochures, and he got nothing. Neither Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, or Macron would stand up because they knew that they would be asked about Canada's sovereignty, the fight with the United States and Donald Trump, and they wanted none of that.
Wow. Well, you mentioned there photo ops for the election. And speaking of the election, Brian, you think an election could be called as early as this weekend. And we've had a couple of polls recently showing the Liberals are now in the lead, but others say the Conservatives are ahead. So you read polls carefully. So what should we make of all of this?
I go deep into the numbers. I don't just read the headlines on polls. It was taught by pollsters how to do this. And all I can tell you right now is the electorate is confused and up for grabs. They don't know what to do. You've got Leger with, I think, a 4-point lead for the Liberals, 42%. That's close to majority territory for them, except the Conservatives are right behind. The NDP is cratering. That much every poll is showing. NDP down at single digits or near single digits. And that's where the support for the Liberals is coming from. A little bit of people moving over from the Conservatives, but most of it's coming from the NDP. And then you've also got the Liberals are pulling older voters, 55 plus, boomers, especially in Atlantic Canada, in Quebec, in Ontario, and a bit in BC. Things haven't changed much across the prairies. The Liberals are up a little bit, but the Conservatives are still dominant across the prairies. Younger voters, though, sticking with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives at the moment. And when you look at the issue sets that drive those voters, the older voters are consumed with Donald Trump and the fight with the United States. Younger voters, still concerned about inflation, the cost of living, being able to buy a home. Two different voting sets. I've never seen it quite like this, so I can't tell you what will happen. But sometimes you look at the polling numbers and, the Conservative support can be overstated because they'll have between 55 and 60% in Alberta and not as much elsewhere. Well, if the Liberals are running up the numbers more than they can win seats in Atlantic Canada, where they're over 50% according to a couple of polls, well then, that's only going to help them so much as things go on. And this is a very bizarre looking map right now. When you read polls, you need to look at those demographic breakdowns I just mentioned, but then you look at the map and where are they getting the support? And it's very tough to say at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. And I think a new prime minister and the election has sort of taken attention and focus off of tariffs for a few days there, but they're still looming. And a concrete example of how those Trump tariffs will hit Canadian industry, a report is saying that the tariff on aluminum will mean $330 million in increased cost for the beer industry due to the cost of those aluminum cans. So could that also impact other drinks like soda or Red Bull or, anything
Absolutely.
else? Yeah?
In fact, I've been hearing about this from the beer guys for a little while. They've been terrified about this. And then I was at an event recently and met an executive from Red Bull who said this is their number one concern because the Red Bull you buy in Canada, it's processed in Canada, it's canned in Canada, and then it's shipped out to the stores. Well, here's how it works for aluminum cans. The aluminum is mostly mined in Quebec. It's processed in the United States. So as it goes from Canada to the US, there's a 25% tariff on it. We don't make what's called sheet can here, and that's what you turn into a can. You roll out the aluminum to big sheets, and then you roll it into a can, cut it, stamp it. We don't make the sheet can here. So the sheet can is either turned into cans in the States, and then the imported cans have another 25% counter tariff on them, or the sheet can is shipped up to Canada. And I believe there's one place, might be Edmonton, that makes cans, and then another place in Ontario. Well, either way, that's a double tariff going back and forth. And so, yeah, whether you're talking about soda or beer or Red Bull, and I haven't looked into whether that includes canned foods. They may have a different processing, but in the beverage alcohol or beverage side of things, when it comes to aluminum cans, nobody's making the material that you need to make the can sheet here at this point, and it'd be very difficult to turn that around on a dime. And so that's a big hit for the industry.
Yeah, it totally is. And speaking of tariffs, your premier, Doug Ford, recently went to Washington, D.C., I believe it was last week, with some of the other Canadian officials. We know that the tariffs are still coming, but did anything come out of those meetings in Washington? You just attended a press conference with Premier Ford this morning. How did that go?
Yeah, I was just down asking questions of the premier, and he said, look, we're not going to escape the global tariffs on April 2nd. Every country in the world is going to be hit with tariffs. But he said they were able to sit down with the Americans, explain each other's positions face to face instead of arguing through TV interviews or posts on social media or angry phone calls. They actually got to meet. And it's remarkable that a premier of any type was in that meeting, but it was Howard Lutnick, Trump's commerce secretary, calling Doug Ford and saying, you got to stop this 25% surcharge on the electricity you sell to us. Come to Washington, let's talk. So Ford says, look, Canada will not escape those tariffs on April 2nd, but the push is to be at the front of the line to renegotiate a new trade deal, which may mean a Canada-US trade deal without Mexico, that the United States wants to reset all their agreements, all their trading, and we're going to be at the front of the line. There were further meetings between Ontario and federal officials with their U.S. counterparts this week, and more meetings coming up next week. So it's lowered the temperature. It's got people focused on where the exemption should be and how quickly we should get to a trade deal because of several things in every single province that the Americans need from us that they can't produce themselves. Or the alternative, if you look at the case of oil from Alberta, you got to buy it from, well, less savory characters like, say, Venezuela or Iran.
Yeah. We're out of time here, unfortunately, but Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for joining us once again today.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've all heard of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters organizations and what kind of an impact that they're having on the younger generation. So joining us to chat more about this is Jen Visser. She is the executive director of Lethbridge Big Brothers Big Sisters. Jen, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long has the organization been around here in Lethbridge? I think by now everyone knows what Big Brothers Big Sisters is, but maybe just talk about it and how long you guys have been around here in town.
Absolutely. So we've been in Lethbridge since 1973, and the building that we're in, we've been in since 1989, the little Victorian-style house on 6th Ave and 7th Street.
Yeah. And have there been a lot of changes over the years as to how things are done?
Yes and no. So we still offer programs that are the same from the 1973 start, but we've adapted other programs to serve different needs of children and our community.
In a nutshell, obviously, Big Brothers Big Sisters is about being a role model, right? Having a mentoring relationship with a big brother or a big sister, and then a child or a teen. So as you call them, bigs and littles, right? So what ages of kids are we talking about here?
So we accept children 6 to 16. We offer 5 different mentoring programs. So we have our community-based one that everybody knows about, where you take a child out in the community for 2 to 3 hours a week. Then we have a school-based program where a volunteer goes to a school for an hour a week. Then we have a teen mentoring program where high school students get to mentor kids. And then we have 2 programs called Game On and Go Girls, which is group mentoring, where we have, it's not a one-on-one relationship, it's a group of children matched to 2 to 3, sometimes 4 volunteers at a school setting.
That's interesting. Is there any one particular program that kind of sees more results, or does it really just depend on the kids? Some kids respond better one-on-one, or some better in a group with another peer there.
We always look at it from a perspective that every child could use another supporting person in their life. And so, since the time I've been with the organization, which has been 15 years, I've seen our programs adapt and grow, and also the needs of kids change in that time. Seen lots of kids with, lots of low self-esteem or just challenges getting along with other kids. Whereas maybe historically we saw children that were coming mainly from a single parent home, which we still serve those kids, but we're really growing to serve any child in our community and surrounding areas who could benefit from having a big brother or big sister.
Yeah. So what children specifically qualify to become a little? How does that process work? How can a parent enroll? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The number one thing is they want to be in the program. So that's our biggest thing is you want to be part of a Big Brother, Big Sister program. Different ways kids are identified could be through a parent seeing that maybe their child just doesn't have somebody in their corner, could be an absentee or a lack of relationships in their life. And also we could see interventions through social services and things like that. But the number one is a school identifying the need of that child, because that's where the number one of our kids come from is schools. And our vast of our programs are actually facilitated in schools.
Oh, interesting. So does the school have to get parental consent to
They
do all
do,
of this?
yeah.
Yes.
So we have lots of paperwork, lots of forms, because we want to ensure every relationship we are creating is happy, safe, and successful.
Okay, so I can kind of envision the school saying to the parent, listen, I think this child would really benefit from being a little brother or sister. That kind of is how the conversation goes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And then they sign, and then we start going into the school. And it, depending on the program, some are longer than others. We have sessions that are 7, and then we have ones that last the entire school year. And then we have some relationships that have been together for 10 years. It's every relationship is different. There isn't a specific way, because we're dealing with people and you can't just put people into boxes. It has to be based on need and relationship.
Yeah. So with that said, how do you go about matching up a big brother or a big sister with a child or teen?
It's all based about compatibility. So we do lots of screening, lots of interviewing, and lots of questions about things that the child is looking for in a mentor, that the parent is looking for. And then same with the volunteer, when they're accepted, that they're paired to a child that's going to be that they're going to have that positive relationship. We have trained staff who make those relationships. So they have a lot of training that they go through, and lots of formalities on our side that are kind of behind closed doors that people don't really see, to make sure that those relationships are a positive influence.
Mm-hmm. So how many visits per week are we talking about here, and how long would a visit last?
All of our programs are once a week that they would see each other. Okay. Some 7 times, some every single week, some an hour to 2.5 hours, depending on the program. When we get a volunteer to sign up with us, they have choice, because we want to make sure that volunteers in our community because everybody's time is very valuable, and we want to make sure that they're able to commit to that time. So we're very upfront saying, if you want to be in this program, it's 1 to 2 hours a week for a year. If you want to be in this program, it's an hour a week for the school year. And if you want to be in this program, it's 7 sessions for an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay. Can you give us a sample of what kinds of activities would take place on a visit?
Yeah, our community-based program, they can go bowling, they can go swimming, they could go anywhere out in the community to spend that time together. And even our office is open if they want to come spend time there during our hours. And then at the school program, it's not academic. So this is about self-regulation, about positive reinforcement. And so some of our programs actually come with a manual that you have 7 sessions, and each one has a content of what you're going to do that day. So could be bullying, could be breathing exercises, it could be about healthy living and active lifestyle.
All right. Okay. So like kind of little discussion topics there to sort of go over. Interesting. Okay. How many kids are currently participating in the programs? I know you were saying those numbers seem to be going up every year, don't they?
We see an increase, and since 2019, we served about 600 kids. And then we had a little bit of dip in 2020 because you couldn't have those face-to-face relationships. Right. And then we saw an increase. In 2024, we served 1,473 kids in active mentoring relationships.
And that was up from 600 something in 2019.
In 2019. From 2023 to 2024, we saw a 12% increase.
Oh my goodness. What does that tell you?
The need is high and the volunteers are low. It's what we're really seeing right now.
Yeah. Is there a wait list for more big brothers and sisters?
We carry 2 wait lists, one for our community-based mentoring program and for our in-school mentoring program. And there's anywhere from 40 to 70 kids waiting at a time.
And that's because, like you said, there aren't enough bigs. Right.
Yeah.
We need
And
more
we've
volunteers.
always had a wait list too.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any stories of how this has impacted a child?
Definitely. We've seen, I mean, especially with the time that I've been there, I've seen many kids walk through the door at 6 years old and be paired with a mentor, and now they're 17. And having that person in their life, we've seen kids successfully go through university. And, you can see the average age of our kids is 10 that start to want to participate in our programs. And if you can foresee, because it's prevention, right? Not intervention. This is before something, might have happened, that we can see if we can lead a child down a positive path, they're going to make right choices in life. And we actually have lots of studies that go into it, that for every dollar that's donated to Big Brothers Big Sisters, there's an $18 return on that in social investment in our community. So kids in our program grow up to give back to their communities, participate in community, and just go on to live a really positive, fulfilling life.
Wow, that's amazing. What kind of feedback do you get from the mentors? How are they impacted?
The mentors get just as much out of the relationship as the kids do. We're very upfront when they join, and that's why we take so much time in creating those relationships to make sure that they're going to last, that they're going to be successful. And we do lots of reviews. Like, you don't just get matched and we don't hear from you. You're connected to the organization for a continuation. And so our caseworkers are constantly working with those mentors. And then we have lots of different events in the community that they can do, hurricanes games, and we get tickets to different things. Or we will put on, like, we'll do pumpkin carving or baking or something like that out of the building.
Yeah, I think it takes a special person to be a big.
Definitely.
It's a huge time commitment, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, we value our mentors so much, and we could not do what we do without them.
Oh, you also have a big couple mentoring program. What's that all about?
We do. So this program is really great. I wish we could get more couples to sign up for it, but you have to be in a relationship for at least a year, and you're matched with a child. And normally the kids in that program come from a background of maybe not seeing a healthy, stable relationship. And so being able to put a child in a relationship where they see a loving, caring couple is such a positive reinforcement to them. And I've seen the matches we make in that program always last a really long time, and they're really successful. And the little becomes part of their family.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. In the beginning there, you mentioned you also have a Go Girls mentoring program. So what does that focus on? Obviously girls. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we have a girls program and a boys program, and we do co-ed too. The girls program is all about self-regulation. So if we have kiddos who come to us and they just don't have the ability, if they have a bad day, how to cope with that. And the average age of kids in that program is about 12 years old. So being a 12-year-old girl is not an easy time in life. And they're paired to a female mentor, and that's in a group. So they're put with a group of their peers. They set up 7 times, and in those sessions they get question boxes. So at the end of every session they can ask any question that they want. And the objective of that program is, when they've gone through it, if they have a day that's not successful for themselves, they can write in a journal, breathing exercise. We've provided them with ability to find other people to talk to, a parent, a sibling, or a mentor, or somebody at their school, and that they can cope better with the challenges that they face in life.
Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, of course, you have a boys program called Game On, right?
Yeah, Game On, they're both very similar. Game On, we talk a lot about healthy living and active lifestyle. Get off the couch and get your body moving is a big piece to that one.
Yeah, you must have some stats on how a relationship like this would affect a child's mental health or their grades or relationships, behavior. You must see it all. Yeah.
Big Brothers Big Sisters has done a great job across Canada in doing a lot of research into our programs. We wouldn't be here for as long as we have if we didn't have that background to say, look at the positive influence we have on children and on our community. Because if we have happy, safe kids, they're going to make better choices and they're going to grow up and continuate that cycle that we need in our community to make it a good place to live.
Right. Now, Jen, you do have a fundraiser coming up. We want to mention this. So Bowl for Kids' Sake on March 21st and 22nd at Holiday Bowl. What is that all about? Tell us about it.
Bowl for Kids' Sake is our longest running fundraisers. We fundraise 3 large fundraisers a year. Last year, we were successful in finding just over $300,000 in fundraisers across our community. Lethbridge and outside area is such a generous community. But Bowl for Kids' Sake is an event that has been going on for 40 years, if not a little bit more. And you can sign up a bowling team through a company. You can individually participate and collect pledges. You can be a sponsor if you can't make it. And you come out, you bowl. 2 hours, you get pizza, you get pop, and we always have a theme, and it's a Western theme this year, which
fun.
we've never done, which I think will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, bring your cowboy hat for sure. And your bowling shoes. No cowboy boots allowed there. So how does someone go about becoming a volunteer or a big brother or big sister? How would somebody do that?
If somebody's interested in becoming a volunteer with us, I would encourage them to go to our website, which is bebig.ca. All of the information about our programs is on there. You also could call the office at 403-328-9355, and you could speak to one of our amazing staff who could walk you through the process. The other thing is you can email us at info.leth@bigbrothersbigsisters.ca.
Sounds wonderful. Jen, thanks so much for being with us today and for sharing all this information with us and about the fundraiser too. So appreciate having you on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Jen Visser is the Executive Director of Lethbridge Big Brothers Big Sisters. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.